Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima speaking about the Kaduna kidnapping just a few days ago. It's been 4 days now since 287 students were kidnapped in Kuriga, Kaduna State. And no, this is not 2014. We're in 2024. But you hear what they say, the more things change, the more they remain the same, sadly, particularly for insecurity in Nigeria. But let's get some more insight into this. We're joined by Dr. Kabiru Adamu, who's MD, Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited, joins us virtually on the show this morning. Dr. Adamu, welcome to the Morning Brief. Well, if you could just unmute so we can hear you.
My apologies. Good morning, Coyote.
Good morning. Welcome to the Morning Brief, Dr. Adamu. As I said earlier on, you think this was 2014, but we're not in 2014. This is not the Chibok case. In fact, in less than a week, we've had way more than the Chibok incident we've had in Kaduna 4 days ago than we had in Borno State as well, even though there's some controversy around that, particularly from the government side of things. But the point is, this is alarming, it is shocking, it is unbelievable that you have that amount of people being kidnapped. I don't know, there was global uproar during Chibok period, even national uproar. This actually cost the government a second term. But from what you've seen with the kidnapping, with the response, is there something we may be missing yet again? Dr. Adamu.
Yes, Coyote. I feel you. I feel your emotions. And I think that is the sentiment that a lot of Nigerians share. I listened to the parents of some of these abducted people. And I want Nigerians to kind of try to situate what happened. Kids went to school in the morning, just around this time. And in the traditional manner in public schools, gathered themselves for the assembly. And it was during the assembly that these gunmen surrounded the school. And we're talking of kids between the ages of probably 7 up until 14, 15, 16. They surrounded the assembly area and literally herded these kids away. Their parents could see them. Some of the vigilantes that were located in Kuriga could see them. In fact, one of the vigilantes who attempted to stop them using the Dane gun that he had was shot by the bandits. And that's how they herded over 280 of them into the forest. And of course, 4 or 5 days into the incident, they're gone, literally. I listened to some of the parents. I heard their cries. I listened to the traditional ruler of Kuriga. I heard his cry. I listened to the governor of Kaduna State. I saw his pain. And it's unfortunate what happened in 2014. It's repeating itself in spite of the fact that from 2014 till date, we have at least 3 policies that the government over this period has attempted to implement, starting from the Safe School Initiative to the Safe School Declaration, to the most recent one, which is the National Policy on Safe Schools, and then, of course, its implementation policy. So, in simple terms, I don't want to mince my word. There is no accountability within the security system. You are pressmen. I haven't heard, perhaps you have heard, who has been held responsible. The police does not have formation. The only formation it had was shut down. Nobody has been held accountable for the missing 280 kids. I don't know of any country where you will have something like that, and then we'll just move on as if it is ants that have been herded into the forest. So it's in simple terms, it's just unfortunate.
Well, Mr. Kabiru, besides accountability, it's like deja vu. If you recall, either it's Chibok or Dapchi or Kagara or Kankara, it's the ease with which the terrorists are able to move that mass of women and children. And, you know, at the onset of this administration, or before it came to power, there were a lot of promises that things would be done differently. What are you seeing, you know, that security agencies are missing, that we haven't seen a significant change in approach to doing things such that we won't have this anymore?
So, Bukola, accountability is in 2 components mainly. the financial accountability and then the operational accountability. What is missing is that sense of responsibility. The element you referred to is principally intelligence. The details of what we're hearing at the moment, that it's possible this gunman moved from somewhere further up northwest. I don't want to mention locations because the issue is still ongoing, but that's what we're hearing, and that is us, just private players. We do not have the kind of intelligence collection capabilities that the government have, but if at our level we're able to gather this, then I'm hoping that the government would also at least show that level of responsibility and step in and start harvesting the intelligence that is out there. Some of these kids escaped, and I know that some of them have been debriefed by common people like me that is not in government. I can't really understand why we're not seeing that. By now, I expect that a war room, some situation center would have been set up with live collection of these types of intelligence, with the analysis of this type of intelligence, and of course with the dissemination to various elements. I haven't had that yet. If it's happening, then I would be very delighted. If it's not happening, I'm hoping that they are listening to us and they will set up such a center and make it 24 hours and make it as effective as possible, because the intelligence is there. I don't want us to kid ourselves about that. It's out there. It's just waiting to be harvested. And in this type of instances, the earlier you move, the better. If you allow time to pass, then, I mean, Leah Sharibu is still in the hands of those monsters. Some of the chief organs are still there. Where at the moment in my organization, we've documented about 465 kids that are students that are in the hands of these monsters. So we don't want that number to increase by these new numbers that have just been abducted.
Mr. Kabir, what are the elements missing in what you describe as operational accountability or operational responsibility? Is it lack of police formations within those communities? Because any Nigerian would wonder, if distress calls were made to the police, to the army, why wasn't there any response quick enough to save or to check the monsters from taking the children to their locations?
So in simple terms, and because I'm mindful of the audience, imagine drawing a line and then you have 6 points on that line. Now that is what every good security system should have, and that is what is missing in terms of the operational accountability. And I'll quickly mention them. In security parlance, we call them the 3 Ds, and then the 3 Rs of security. If you match them up, they make the 6 points on that line. So number 1 is the ability of the security system that has been implemented to deny the enemy the ability to take its targeted interest, in this instance, students. So that ability was totally not there. These guys came, they surrounded the school, and apparently the school did not even have a perimeter fence, which was one of the elements contained in the policy that we have at the moment on safe schools. So that's number 1, accountability. Who should have constructed that fence that he did not construct the fence? The second element is the ability to deter. Now, different from deny, that ability to deter means that the perpetrator will be afraid that even if he does, he will be arrested. And so he says, okay, this is too dangerous, let me allow it. And that is principally our criminal justice system that is failing to arrest and punish offenders. So criminals are able to perpetrate crime, frankly, with no consequence, as it were. There are so many things related to this second element, to deter. The third one is the ability to delay. So assuming the enemy thinks that, okay, the prize is very, very important, he's going to get, billions of naira or trillions of naira from that, and then he, damns the 2 consequences. The first, deny and deter, and then he still goes ahead. The system should have the capability to delay him, which brings us to the next 3 elements, which are the 3 Rs, the response that you spoke about. Now, because of the spread, Nigeria is such a big country, you want to have the ability to respond. And in security balance, we say that ability should not be between 2 maximum to 15 minutes. Now, depending on the consequence of that target, the ability to respond should be between those minutes. In this instance, failure completely. They carried out that incident for about 45 minutes from what we had. Like I said, the parents of these kids could see them, literally. And they cried when they saw them because they knew what was going to happen. And frankly, nothing happened because there was no police formation in that location. So in terms of accountability, if I was given the chance to investigate this, why did the police withdraw from that location? Why didn't they put an alternative arrangement? And we're not just talking of the police. There are 29 ministry departments and agencies in security that should have some level of responsibility in this element. Now, the fifth one, that is after the incident that happened, is the review component, which is why I spoke about setting up some form of emergency center. By now, you should be reviewing what went wrong, who did what, who didn't do what, and then you take actions. And the idea of that review is to allow you learn from your mistakes. Chibok happened, Dapchi happened, Katsina, several schools in Katsina, in Niger State, in Zamfara happened. We have enough lessons that we should have learned from in this review process. And then the last one is the recovery component from all of the first five. Whatever you learned, the mistakes you made, you implement them. Now, in simple terms, this is the security structure that should be in place that, frankly, we don't have at the moment. So when we talk of operational accountability, and these are the 1, 2, 3, up to 6 that I would sit and ask myself, out of these 29 MDAs in security that we have, which one is responsible for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? And then I'll take the necessary action. If they are not willing to work, we either show them the exit door, or in certain instances, we even penalize them, because for God's sake, these are our kids.
I'm just sitting here thinking about how traumatized, how much of fatigue is hitting Nigerians when we see these numbers. Because as we talk about these things, Nigerians are tired of filibustering. At the bottom of this, in unit terms, we're talking about souls, human beings, and even to worsen the situation, these are children. And so the natural question will be, are we really brutally honest enough to begin to look for solution when it comes to this issue? Because they say, if you're not brutally honest, you're not going to have national healing. What exactly is the driver, or what are the enablers of this? Because it's one too many. We've asked all the questions. What else have we not asked?
There are several enablers, but I'll be brief and I'll just mention the most important ones. Number one is the perpetrator. We know the perpetrators. These are gunmen that we popularly call bandits, or if you like, terrorists. We still don't have an anti-kidnap framework in Nigeria. It's sad. We've talked about it for years, but we still don't have one. I want us to at least start from that basis. Because we don't have an anti-kidnap framework. And the good thing, which I'm excited about, is that if you look at the renewed hope agenda of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, it's contained there. That there is a statement that points to the fact frameworks will be developed for each of the 6 geopolitical zones to address peculiar challenges in them. And so I'm hoping that the coordinators, and there are 6 of them, would very soon, in fact, I hope that by now, they are already developing a framework to address that. Now, because there is no framework, we are seeing a haphazard creation of security structures by the subnationals. And that in itself is a challenge. When the excitement was that several states, Kaduna, Zamfara, Katsina, the most recent one is Sokoto, have created state-level security structures. Most people were excited, but I cautioned. I said, well, there is a need for caution, mainly because there is no framework. I doubt if there is any federal MDA that you go to now to tell them to give you the details of the operatives that are in this subnational structures, and you get it. There is none. Now, what has happened is that several people have been co-opted into these subnational structures, and in co-opting them, the 3 elements that could have made them effective, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, have been missing. The second element that is missing is their training. Now, because of that, we're seeing a resurgence. They were recruited with a notion that certain ethnic groups are responsible for the crime that we're seeing in the northwest part of the country. And because that particular ethnic group was not included in the recruitment. You now have a situation where they are targeting that particular ethnic group, and naturally that ethnic group would seek to arm itself. So there is a competition, as it were, at the moment for influence between the various, subnational structures that exist. So that is one enabler. The second enabler is the existence of ungoverned spaces. In the case of the Kuriga incident, they moved the kids into the forest. And since then, they have been moving in the forest. They will probably end up in that particular state where we're hearing they came from. And so that the fact that we still don't have any mechanism for dominating ungoverned spaces is the second enabler. The third enabler is their ability to move. They came on motorbikes. At least that's the intelligence we were able to gather from the villagers. And they moved from, like I said, a particular state in the northwest across several, probably up to almost 1,000 miles. So if there was capable intelligence, we could have harvested their movement and prevented where they were going to, or even stopped them before they reached that decolation. So that's the third enabler, the inability to prevent the movement of these persons on motorbikes and the inability to harvest intelligence. Of course, the fourth enabler is the response capability that we spoke about earlier on with Bukola, because even if they were able to move and arrive at that location, if the response capability was effective, would have been able to stop them. So in summary, these are some of the enablers that have allowed this to happen. You can talk about the fact that they are still able to have access to petroleum to put in their bikes, to travel up to maybe 400, 500, 600 kilometers. You need petroleum to put in those bikes. And then, of course, even after the incident, to move back to those locations, they need petroleum. So this, in summary, are some of the enablers. How about the communication? They still are able to communicate among themselves. Someone is controlling them, and they communicate through, most likely, mobile phones. So this are, in reality, some of the enablers. And I'm shocked. I'm sure you'll be wondering, while I say this, what are our security agencies doing? For every enabler I mentioned, there is a security department that has a mandate to monitor that particular enabler. And that takes us back to my earlier point about accountability. Who is asking questions regarding the inability of this particular security department to implement those or to prevent those enablers?
The more you talk about this, the more it doesn't seem to make sense, because you break it down so well and you're like, it doesn't make sense, still doesn't make sense. And part of me, I keep saying this, because these are children, these are human beings. We've said that time and again, almost sound like a broken record. They are herded, that's the word you used. If you were to herd cows, that much cows, it will take some effort. 287 cows, the effort it will take. It will be tough to herd that much cows across that length of distance, not to talk of children in Borno, in this case, Kaduna. You talk about enablers. There are also community enablers. I don't know if that's something you want to speak to, human enablers, because I think it was the governor of Borno State that said, some of those women actually went into the bush themselves. Now, whether he meant they went into the bush to get firewood or they willingly went to the bush to meet the terrorists that kidnapped them is another thing entirely. But I'd like to bring another slant into this, because we've heard that during the month of Ramadan, there's usually some sort of reduction in their activities. We've had a former DSS official saying that. And I wonder if you see, I know we shouldn't rely on, periods for us to fight insecurity, but it looks like that's where we're at right now. So do you see some form of reduction now that we're in the holy month of Ramadan? Again, I've heard people say, well, some of these bandits are not even, believers in Islam. They're not adherents anyway. They do not pray and the rest. But having Ramadan come into the mix, do you see any change whatsoever?
So, Kayode, it depends. At the moment, and I'm mindful I'm in a public space, but for the essence of what we're discussing, I'll mention it. There are two campaigns that the global franchise, the Islamic State, is running at the moment, and that is impacting Nigeria. I'll leave it at that. So the possibility that global franchise will issue a statement, what in Islamic parlance we call fatwa, in other words, calling on their global franchises across the world to carry out certain activities is there. And that means, as a country, we need to have our intelligence capabilities monitoring such statements and not only monitoring such statements, monitoring how the members of this global franchise, not just in Nigeria, but in the Sahel region, are responding to those statements. Now, for now, we haven't had any statement from the global franchise, either Islamic State or Al-Qaeda, regarding Ramadan. What they have spoken about is the conflict in Gaza, the conflict between Israel and Hamas. Now, that is likely to drive into the period. And, the Americans have tried to make sure that there is some form of peace, call it whatever, before Ramadan. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened. So it's very likely that we're going to see a response in that regard. Now, all of what I'm trying to say is that intelligence and security are transient. We should never lay back. That the lethargic approach that we have, where we kind of just wait until they happen, that's not security. Security should be forward-looking. Intelligence gathering should be as wide as possible, and then, of course, we should be able to put in place. I mean, our power infrastructure is being attacked over time. How many of us have wondered what is happening? Again, I want to mention that there are two campaigns that are ongoing, and our security agencies and intelligence bodies should wake up and not just understand what is going on, but put in place measures to prevent them from happening.
I'd like us to take a critical look yet again at the statement by the Borno State governor that reports indicate that some of the women probably returned to their abductors. Does this, for you, I wonder what you think about it first of all, and then does it leave a question mark on the government's de-radicalization and reintegration program, because some of these women were housed in the internally displaced persons camps?
Well, the truth of it is an industry has emerged that is supporting some of the security challenges that we have in the country. Is it terrorism? Is it the kidnap for ransom? There are industries that are supporting it. And some of these industries are there as a result of the both social and environmental challenges that we have in Nigeria. Now, Operation Safe Corridor, which is one of the most prominent and I think globally recognized components of our counter-terrorism strategy. Sadly, and I say this with all sense of responsibility, there hasn't been any independent evaluation of its progress or lack of progress, as it were, over a period. So it's very difficult really to assess it and say whether it's been successful or not. Everything we hear is we're relying on the implementer, and you can't rely on the implementer to give you the facts. There has to be an independent evaluation, and it's high time. It's I think about a decade or over a decade that program is being implemented. Now, with regards to the situation in the Northeast, where we've seen almost 80,000 or more persons, surrendering, family members and the operatives of either the Jamaat al-Ahlissin al-Dawat wal-Jihad or the Islamic State in West Africa province. In that instance, I think the Borno State government is dealing with a lot. It's very difficult to handle such a huge number. And when you keep them in camps, some of them together with the same persons that they victimized, then you can see the social issues that will emerge out of that. Now, that's number one. Number two is the livelihood issues that surrounds that. With the current economic circumstances in Nigeria, those livelihood issues are also increased. Those people are complaining that the food they're being given at the camp is not enough, so they have to go out to fend for their livelihood. In this instance, wood, because that's what I had. That the particular incident in Gamboru Ngala, they went out to look for wood. And so it wasn't like they deliberately went out to meet their abductors. It's possible that one or two of them, as a result of the Stockholm Syndrome, or even as a result of abandonment, or some of the challenges of resentment that would come from their victims within the camp, may still go back there. Point I'm trying to make is there are several issues that have emerged and that as a country we've not addressed holistically. So the governor's point may be correct, but it's simplistic. I think we need to be a little bit diverse in terms of disaggregating the issues so that we understand the various elements that may have led to them. You can't gather people in a camp, not feed them adequately, and then stop them from going out to fend for their livelihoods. One has to give. Either you provide enough security that will allow them to have their livelihoods, or you feed them enough for them to stay in that IDP camp.
So when you look at what happened on Christmas Eve on the plateau, almost 200 people killed, and in January another set of people killed, and then what happened in Borno recently, and this one with the children, it's almost ludicrous to look at the Nigerian state and say, are they overwhelmed? It's not a question you naturally should ask. But looking at the ease of execution, as Bukola has said, it's difficult not to believe that we're overwhelmed as a people. So my question is the punitive measure being put out by legislation insufficient to deter this bad behavior? Because this is an assault on state, and the state seems not to be wielding enough big stick.
So when I was mentioning those 6 things, I talked about deterrence, which is actually number 2. And interestingly, when we saw that game between the Senate and the security leadership, where they came, they met them, and then there was a spin doctor among them who, just spinned whatever he spinned, and the Senate could not even, interrogate him. The reality is that the kind of seriousness that the security sector oversight requires, we're not seeing that. And so I wouldn't use the word overwhelmed, but I would rather say there is a politicization of the security function in Nigeria. That politicization is being played out consistently. When the Senate issued a vote of confidence, as it were, on the security sector leadership, a lot of Nigerians, because we try to measure in Beacon, we try to measure the perception and the confidence, as it were, of Nigerians. And in measuring that perception and confidence, one of the things that we saw immediately after that parley between the Senate and the security sector leadership is that incredulity that I'm seeing in all of you here. A lot of Nigerians were asking the question, hey, how come the Senate is giving a vote of confidence on these guys, when in that month alone, my company recorded 1,022 deaths. In the month of February, we recorded almost 800 deaths, and yet there was a vote of confidence. Now, I'm not saying that the security sector leadership are not trying. They are trying. But that gum that will bring their efforts together and show progress, it's not there at the moment. And the reason is this. You hear the statement, we need a whole of society, and then we need a whole of government approach. I must say, with all sense of responsibility, we, as at now, don't have a whole of society and don't have a whole of government approach to managing security at the moment. The president has beautiful elements within the Renewed Hope agenda and several other documents that followed the Renewed Hope agenda, but this implementation is lacking. And I think the managers of the various elements of our security component, especially the administrative structure around the president, they need to wake up and look closely at those little things that would tie coordination, cooperation, and collaboration within the security sector, so that when things like this happen, we can nip them in the bud, we can hold those that drop the ball accountable, and then we can move forward as a nation.
Well, Dr. Adamu, let's wind down with this. There's a lot to act upon, not even ponder upon now. And I mean, we should act as far as yesterday. There's a lot of comments coming in on this conversation. A lot of Nigerians are shocked and bewildered, as you are. But while we just get some of those messages up, do you agree? Because you said there's been no legislation properly on kidnapping. Do you agree with the wife of the president who says that there should be capital punishment for kidnapping?
It's not as simple as that. There are 3 things that you need to do to manage any crime situation. Number 1, you need to understand what is driving the perpetrators. So we need a sociological study immediately to understand. So the second one is we also need to increase protection. And then the third one is to reduce the ability to enjoy the benefit of the crime. So it's not just about...
So you don't support capital punishment?
No, like I said, it's not as simple as that. In certain instances, capital punishment, but not in a circumstance where even the judiciary, the role of the judiciary is questionable. At the moment, I have about 500 and thereabout cases of missing Nigerians who have been arrested and whose whereabouts are unknown. So imagine such a situation where someone just slaps abduction on them and then they are killed. No, there must be a process. That's what I'm trying to say. We must sanitize certain other components before we reach capital punishment.
All right. Dr. Kabir Adamu, MD, Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited, thank you for the insight which you've provided on the show this morning.
Thank you for having me.
If we could just quickly run through some of the comments we've gotten.
Yeah, exactly.
Take a look at this one. Julius Ferima, that's from Lagos, says the government is not just serious at all. How can 287 girls be transported to a certain location and that location won't be known? How do they feed them? How do they go about the logistics for these large number of students without intelligence to locate this very hidden location?
And this is from Therese, who are no location, by the way. It's obvious that these evil mercenaries are now trying to give the government give Tinubu the treatment they gave Jonathan with the Chibok girls. So this is our own view. I hope the security services are on top of this. This is obviously a ploy to destabilize the country further. Why carry out such heinous acts against schools, children, women, education, all of that? No one is ever held accountable or to account for these happenings. This is unacceptable.
Well, this one is from Victor Moore, and Victor says, good morning. Does anyone understand how over 200 children are abducted and taken away from their school? I mean, how? In a bus or buses, and no one can track the movement of such a large number of human beings? Amazing indeed. Yeah. That's from Victor Moore.
Well, that is not the amazing that we want to hear. It's not the good amazing. It is the shocking and wild kind of amazing. But we'll go to break now. Keep those comments coming in. We'll be taking them during the course of the show. Hashtag CTV Morning Brief, and of course on WhatsApp. We'll go to break now. We'll talk about another situation that has been on for decades. I'm talking the power situation. You're probably watching this without power in your home and your office, so it concerns you and I. Stay with us.